Good morning. Some governments are very great with the words. The political leaders speak up and speak up in such a convincing manner, though they mean nothing. But unfortunately, when they speak, although the meaning is lacking, content is lacking, yet it does make an impact. However, all the impact is lost when those words do not match the dates. Our Honorable President, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, the other day gave a speech, a roaring speech at United Nations. But look at his words and ask yourself, was Trudeau really saying what he was saying? He speaks words very well, but do they mean anything? A quote thing, Justin Trudeau, there is no country on the planet that can walk away from the challenge and reality of climate change. And for our part, Canada will continue to fight for the global plan that has the realistic chance of countering it. We have a responsibility to future generations and we will uphold it. Very fine. And it elicited a round of applause. Good words. Until you notice what these words are not saying. Nowhere in his speech does Trudeau say that Canada will hit its commitments under the Paris Climate Accord. He says Canada will fight for the global plan and not for the Canadian plan because there is no Canadian plan. And no one has suggested that Canada can actually meet its target, provided there is a will which is lacking. Let's be clear. What Canada promised to do in Paris simply isn't possible right now. And that is because the promises themselves have suggested in the carbon emission outlook to 2030. Western Canada plans to remain flat at best, a conversion. That means that Eastern Canada, to compensate the lethargy of the Western Canada, would have to reduce its emission by 70%, by 70% by 2030 to meet the Paris targets. And friends, that's not happening. That cannot happen. That is simply not possible. But we will support the rest of the world as you do what we want. So let others do it. We can't do it. This is a suggestion by the Prime Minister. It's just like saying, hey, did you see my Star Wars socks? And there's an applause on that for whenever he shows the socks. The CBC and the Toronto Star and the Globe and Mail go gaga on that, saying, well, he's showing his scars to Merkel. If that is meeting the Paris goals, diplomacy is easy. The Paris promise is broken already. Normally, we count on Her Majesty's Royal Opposition, the Conservatives, and the NDP to hold the minister's socks to the fire for breaking a commitment, and especially an international commitment. But this time both the parties are failing and failing miserably. Ed Fast. His main worry is the carbon tax. Carbon pricing already covers much of Canada, British Columbia, Alberta, Ontario, Quebec. At the lower level, Trudeau has proposed carbon pricing is like to have little effect on Canada's emission. We have seen what has happened in British Columbia. And Ed Fast knows it, but he is quite content to stick to what Prime Minister Harper said, 2030 goals, emissions, and he's aware that neither Harper could reach those goals, nor Trudeau would be able to reach them. Normally, conservatives have been very generous and they supplied the Trudeau government with political cover in the form of the statement by Gary Ritz when he called the minister climate Barbie. And the whole thing was diverted. The attention came to sexism rather than to environment, a typical technique called Taqiyya technique of Islam. The environment minister jumped in as a useful distraction, and she avoided asking the critical questions. Liberal Party at least was sensible enough to weaponize this stupid remark for his fundraising, and the Conservative leader kept his distance. Now imagine, friends, if every car in this country went electric in the next 8 years, we would see a reduction in emission by 5%. That's it. And that is nothing as compared to the goal of 30%. It's not even close. It's not even 1/3. And there's no point in pushing the opposition to push the Liberals to come up with a plan. How would they meet the 30% emission? And when they speak loudly in favor of Paris Accord and condemn Trump for leaving Paris Accord, why don't they tell specifically what they are going to do? At least Trump has been honest enough to say that it's not going to make any use, and I don't want to waste my time and energy and money on that. So, what we are stuck up with is a very meaningless debate. The Liberals embraced the targets laid down by the previous Conservative government, and the Conservative government's insincerity to the emission was patent, and Liberals have gladly embraced that insincerity. The only point is disagreement is over the methods. The Liberals want to pursue a carbon tax plan that won't work, and Conservatives believe in a national carbon tax that will spoil the economy absolutely. Now, what would work? Of course, a carbon tax set at very high level would affect consumer behavior, and coupled with federal funding to reduce fossil fuel use. But that's not what the government is proposing. So the whole debate is a meaningless debate. It's a sterile debate. It's a debate only meant to hoodwink you, the voter. The whole debate is geared to make fools of you so that you do not hold them to ransom. And then look at another custodian of the environment, say the NDP. New Democrats seem to be ensuring that Trudeau government is living up to Paris Accord. And look, they have the leadership race going on, and what their prospective leaders say. Jagmeet Singh is one of the contenders, and he has doubled down on Trudeau's unrealistic goal by saying that he will not reach the target in 2030, but he will reach it in 2025. If you can't reach a target in 2030, how can you reach in 2025? Very good soundbite, but absolutely meaningless. He can do so only when he stops oil and gas production. And that's well next to impossible unless he wants to make the country bankrupt. Look at the second candidate, Charlie Angus. He proposed a national carbon budget. Interesting idea. But given that today oil and gas rights constitute 25% of the nation's emission, how would allocate the budget? No plea, because there's no way you can allocate a budget when 25% of the emission is from the fossil fuel. Alberta alone generates 40% of emissions and has only 10% of the population. Given the huge regional disparities in emission, How does he get the interprovincial political conflicts? Would Quebec agree? Would Ontario agree? No. Let's look at the third candidate, Nikki Ashton. She is opposed to the pipeline construction. Now she's confusing the cause and effect. Pipes are built when the market conditions are amenable to them. Reduce the consumption and you don't need a pipeline. But stopping the pipelines does not reduce the consumption, only the prices would be higher. She seems to think, wrongly of course, that solutions is going to come not from corporations, from the grassroots. As the people will stop using fossil fuels. That's, shall I say, non-plussing? I was going to say idiotic, but no, it's not idiotic, it's lunatic. A great many corporations in Canada have interest in the long run to reduce by 30%. But you can't just cut them. You can't. The action is going to be nowhere near 30%. Now look at the fourth candidate, Guy Carson. Guy Carson has some interesting ideas. He's talking about a serious carbon tax and large investment in electrification. First time any sensible thought has come from a politician. But he's also hitting about 30% by 2025, which is again unrealistic. But at least he has a plan which puts him miles ahead of the Trudeau government. His idea will certainly extend reduction beyond what Trudeau government has proposed. And Trudeau and his ministers need to start telling Canada the truth. This is the time when the government has to come up with the truth. This is the time when the government should be not only be transparent, but palpably clear and tell the facts of people. Canada is a fossil fuel producer. That's given. And the government cannot act against the producers which sustain the economy of the country. They can't do it, liberals. Conservatives cannot do it, NDP cannot do it. Whichever government does it is dooming the country to a perpetual bankruptcy. So, we are not going to hit 30% by 2035 and definitely not by what Jagmeet and his court say by 2025. If everything is in the current plan and everything goes well, we might be able to cut emissions by 12% by the target date. But there's a difference between 12% and 30%. And that is if we face no roadblocks. And the roadblocks would be there. I don't care what the politics of the politicians are. They are engaged in politics, undercutting each other. But the math also doesn't care for what they're saying. What they're saying is illogical, incomprehensible, only sound bites, meaning nothing. You know, this is what exactly Shakespeare meant when he said, all sound and fury signifying nothing, zero, zilch, nada. And the Trudeau's critics, the Conservative Party and the media, there's a need for them to stand up and hold the government to account. Force him to confront the vast gap between his rhetoric and his actions. Saying that we are with a global plan without having a Canada plan is absolutely dumb-witted. We don't need more stupid insults or dim-witted articles about Prime Minister's socks. We need answers. And we need answers more than UN got. We need concrete plan. Canada needs it. Or we should say like Trump, okay, we cannot do it, so we are walking out of the Paris Accord. But on the other side, we adopt a high moral tone. Holier than thou, better than thou, more concerned, custodians of the word. And when it comes to working, we don't have a single line written in timeline in our proposed action because we have no proposed action. We simply believe in making speeches rather than in making concrete plans and implementing them. That's what's required. Formulation of plans and implementing them with a time-bound deadlines. And friends, that is not happening. And that's a tragedy. The words and the deeds don't match. Words are high-faulting, pleasing, can attract applause. But same very words, when they are repeated, are remembered after 5 years, 10 years, would bring in derision, contempt, ridicule. And I cry, I feel sorry for my country, which will be subject of ridicule because of inept leadership, which only believes in sound bites and not in action. Thank you.